Unless you've been living under a rock for the last couple of weeks, you might have heard of this little flick called Trolls World Tour. Well, as it turns out, this kids' film might actually start a chain reaction that could change the landscape of cinema as we know it. I know, it's kind of ridiculous, but that's where we are in 2020. I guess anything can happen. The reason behind this, of course, is that the film has made so much money by being released on demand that has now got Universal Pictures rethinking its entire strategy for how to release films on demand and in cinema, prompting a huge backlash from cinemas all across the world. But before we dive into that debacle, I would just like to say welcome back to my channel, and if you haven't subscribed already, why not give it a go now? I mean, it'll make my day if you do. Cheers. Okay, so back to the debate at hand. Now, don't get me wrong, whenever there's a big success in film, I feel like that's an occasion worth celebrating. After all, so many tentpole movies nowadays tend to fall flat upon release and become huge box office bombs. And sure, it might be fun to rat on those movies, especially if they're just terrible and just not worth watching, but you have to remember there's a lot of hard work and effort that goes into those movies behind the scenes, so any success is always worth celebrating. With Trolls World Tour though, it's a little different this time around. Of course, with no cinemas open at the moment, Universal Pictures decided to forego a cinematic release for Trolls World Tour and just hit it straight on demand. Now the interesting thing here is that in the few weeks since it was made available, the film has made more money than the previous Trolls movie did in 5 months of being in the cinemas. That's insane. Now, of course, whenever a new strategy turns out to be successful, of course studios are going to take notice. I mean, they're in the money-making business after all. But I feel like Universal Pictures has jumped the gun a bit in using Trolls World Tour's success as a testament to the potential of video on demand. First and foremost, I feel like the current social climate has had a huge impact on that success. I mean, suddenly you have scores of working parents who have to work from home yet also take care of their kids at the same time. And if they discover that there's a brand new movie that can distract their kids for a little while, I mean, why wouldn't they jump at that? Anything that can keep kids entertained at the moment is doing tremendously well. It's the same reason why it's so hard to get a hold of a Nintendo Switch at the moment. But because of the success of Trolls World Tour, Universal Pictures is now deciding that for the future it will release films in cinemas and on VOD at the same time, causing a huge uproar with cinemas as AMC, Cineworld and Odeon have all now pledged to not screen any of Universal Pictures movies from here on out. And yet, as Universal Pictures still produces some of the world's biggest franchises like Fast and the Furious, this move is completely unprecedented, and there's no telling what impact this might have on cinema going in the future. While I don't personally agree with the new strategy at Universal, nor do I agree with the backlash from the major cinema chains. In fact, I think it's fair to say that given that cinema has been struggling for some years to try and retain audiences, particularly in the wake of the rise of streaming services, something has to change. But this just isn't it. For instance, the Prince Charles Cinema in Leicester Square brings in packed audiences almost every night by screening classic movies that people want to see on the big screen, whilst also incorporating sing-alongs and quote-alongs that make the whole thing more of an interactive experience for movie fans. Just up the road at Picture House Central, however, that cinema boasts a cafe, a dedicated restaurant, and a bar. So when you go to Picture House Central, you're not going just for the movie, you're going for the experience, the night out, a chance to see a great film, and a chance to speak with your friends about it before or afterwards. Now, these business models have proved incredibly successful for both of those cinemas, and I think it's high time that other cinemas start to look towards success stories like Picture House Central and Prince Charles Cinema and adopt what they can to survive into the future. And who knows, maybe there is a way to incorporate VOD with cinematic releases, and maybe cinemas could start selling an additional ticket, one that grants you access to a screening, but also grants you a code to go download that movie when you get home. Who knows? I don't have the answers here, but I don't feel as though the fallout is going to help anything. If anything, it's just going to make the situation worse for both parties. After all, one of the best parts of going to see a movie in the cinema is being able to share those classic, amazing moments with a crowd and sharing the same reactions as the people around you. To see that disappear would be a huge shame, and I feel like it would be robbing future generations of what makes movies so fantastic. But what about you? Do you feel as though there's a right or a wrong party in this whole debacle? Do you see a future where VOD and cinemas could coexist? Let your thoughts be known in the comments below.